There are two sides to every story. The National Broadcasting Company presents the vivid drama of life itself. Broadcasting's original program of Mediation, the court of human relations. And now the man who has familiarized millions of people with the idea of mediation helped to make it a creative force in American life. A.L. Alexander.
These are exciting days in which to be alive. In these knowing times, to attempt to absorb even a tiny fraction of accumulated knowledge is something positively frightening. But we needn't be much of a scholar to know that aside from the desire of every one of us to make things around us as attractive as possible, safe and livable, there are two basic urges: the urge for self-preservation, to fight to get the necessities with which to remain alive, and secondly, to reproduce our kind. Now, this is a program that deals with actual conflicts, the misunderstandings that arise among us in the attempt to overcome the barriers that interfere with what all of us want, yes, and feel we're justified in having: a reasonably happy and harmonious existence. We welcome our mediators, whom these parties to dispute have agreed to accept as their judges in these matters of controversy. The distinguished American novelist, Miss Fannie Hurst. Noted authority in the field of social ethics and adult education, Dr. Lloyd E. Foster. A man recognized as one of the great anthropologists of our time, Dr. Ashley Montague. Now, if Dr. Montague's title scares you, don't let it, because it just has to do with the way people get to live physically and socially, and the why and the how reduced to their simple essential elements. We trust some doubtful things will be better understood. Now, this is case number 5811, and here is the complainant.
Mr. Alexander, members of the board, I would like to know, does anybody have to use physical violence in order to keep proving to a girl that he loves her? I am 22 years old. I've been keeping company with Carol for almost a year now. I love her and I want to marry her. But there's this one thing that has come between us, and it's just made me a physical wreck. I'm nervous from it. I can't sleep. I've had to go to the doctor, and he's had to give me pills to calm my nerves.
Now, suppose we dispense with all names and you tell us what this is all about.
Yes, sir. Well, for some strange reason, this girl believes that I should keep fighting to prove my love for her, to protect her honor. If we walk down the street and men make remarks and whistle, she feels that I should fight just to protect her honor. And I feel it's a silly thing to do. I mean, fight every time we walk down the street. I mean, every attractive girl is subject to some attention. And if I were to get into a fight every time a man whistled at her, I'd land in the hospital.
Has there hardly been a time that you've been out with her, more or less, and there hasn't been some kind of unpleasantness?
Oh, this happens all the time. There isn't a time that we go out. I mean, we're always constantly arguing. She feels that I should fight.
Now, what is it exactly that you'd like to know?
Well, I would like to know, does a man have to fight to prove his manhood to a girl?
What do you feel if you were to prove your manhood, as she suggests? What do you think would happen to you?
Well, I'd be in constant trouble. I'd be in the hospital all the time. I mean, it's...
Well, now, suppose we hear from the respondent.
Well, I don't understand his point of view at all. Back home, it's a man's duty to, well, prove his love for the girl by honoring her.
Yes, now, what do you think should happen if a man accompanies a young woman?
Well, if a man is accompanying a young woman down the street and somebody makes remarks to her, don't you think he should do something to protect her if it's the girl he loves?
What is it, principally, that you look for in a man?
Well, I guess first of all, I look for loyalty. And is it loyal for a man to stand by and permit the girl he loves to be embarrassed?
Well, now you say that you've been embarrassed. Suppose you give us a couple of examples.
Well, there was a time in the movie, and there was a man sitting to the left side of me, and he kept making advances, and I told my friend about it, and he said, well, you know, you're just imagining it. And I knew I wasn't. I knew it was right because he kept persisting. And so then I said, well, you know, can we move or something? And he said, no, you're always moving around the movie house. And I felt very uncomfortable. I couldn't even enjoy the picture.
Do you suppose you could give us another example?
Well, we're on the subway one night. It was very late at night. And there wasn't anybody on it except this man. He was rather tipsy. And he kept sitting down beside me and was very offensive. So I turned to my friend and I said, you know, won't you do something about this? And so he said, okay, we'll move. And we moved, and the man kept following us. And Mr. Alexander, it was really ridiculous. He followed us all over the subway. And I think he could have done something, that something was in order there.
Well, now, just what feeling does this give you about this young man?
Well, I always believe that if a man really loves you, then he's concerned about your welfare and happiness and feelings. And, well, I just don't understand.
And how does he make you feel?
Well, he makes me feel terrible because every time I bring up the issue, he makes me feel like I'm the culprit. And I'd like to have it settled by the board, please, that isn't it proper that a man accompanying a woman should stand up for and protect her?
She is calling me a coward and a weakling. Well, I must explain something. When I was a youngster, I came from a neighborhood where I was considered a juvenile delinquent. I was always in constant trouble, fights all the time. In fact, I hit a teacher in school, and I was lucky to get out of it the way I did. And my parents asked me if I did not promise to them that I would give up this crowd and give up fighting, that they would send me to a reform school.
And did you make that promise?
I most certainly did, and I promised before God that I would keep it. And I feel that I am more of a man now to keep that promise. I won't break my vow before God. And that's what she's asking me to do.
Well, it's okay to make excuses, and I'm not saying go out and fight, but I just believe that if he really loved me, he would do something to protect me, that in a case of emergency, it would alter some of his feelings.
What is your feeling as to how a situation of this kind should be handled?
Well, in a situation like this, I feel the best thing to do is to avoid it. And I feel I am more of a man by avoiding it. I have more self-control. I have been able to do this in the past year since I have made that promise to my parents. I used to be a hothead and jump off the handle, but now I can control myself. And if I were to fight at every little thing, I'm not saying it's her imagination. She is an attractive girl. But I would be in constant trouble, and I don't want that. I've learned my lesson. I just want to be an upright citizen. But she feels that she's living in the Gone with the Wind era where you have to duel or something. I love her very much, and I think this is enough.
Miss Hurst?
I think this young man just about lifted the phrase off my mind. It's amazing to me, and I'd have to sit here and meet this charming young woman to realize that this hangover, so to speak, is still with us. My dear child, you are living with yesterday's 2,000 years. The relationships of men and women are no longer the age of chivalry. Men do not wear lace in their sleeves anymore, maybe too bad, maybe not so bad, nor do they throw their coats across mud puddles for ladies to walk over. Now, I think this young man has a manly and a fine point of view. One thing I don't understand, may I ask you, you are a very pretty and charming girl. You're quite irresistible, I'll grant this young man. But how is it? The world is filled with pretty girls. There are quite a few, one or two. Are these wolf calls when you are accompanied by a young man, so constant, or do you sometimes fancy because of your prettiness that a gesture means rather more than it does, or a look of admiration? But for this young man to jump into a fray, I should think that you would be so grateful that he is not the hothead that he once was, and that you would accept it as a tribute to you. He is learning self-restraint, he is learning control, he has matured, and you're asking him to revert to a day that is gone. It is no longer with us, and you are unequipped young woman. Catch up with today. Catch up with this young man. You're bringing up the rear, my dear, and you're so pretty.
Dr. Montague?
Well, I agree with Miss Hurst, and I think that what you perhaps think as weakness in your friend is really strong evidence of his great strength. It's very easy to fly off the handle and to take opprobrium at an insult offered, but one must consider from whom the insult comes. Most of the people, I would say virtually all the people who offer you these embarrassments are people who are beneath notice, and to pay any attention to them is to honor them beyond their worth. And the wisest thing is to confer ignominy upon them by not noticing them. And your friend is doing the right thing by not embroiling himself in situations which might end in disaster for both of you. As I well know, I worked in a hospital in New York for 8 years, and I saw many cases of very respectable young men who were severely injured because they called a man's bluff under very similar circumstances, and in several cases were stabbed, and in one case were shot. This all to my knowledge. And living in New York City is no tea party, and I would suggest that perhaps what you are suffering from, if I may use the word to some extent, is what we would describe in my field as cultural disorientation. In other words, you come from a part of the country where chivalry and knighthood is perhaps still in flower. But in the north, in the east, it is long gone with the wind.
Dr. Foster?
Well, I think it's very apparent that these two young people come from widely different cultural backgrounds. This young woman from the South, where the code of chivalry is extant, and this young man from the North, where bluntness and directness and realism are apparent all the time. I do not feel that he should use his fists to defend your honor, except in extreme cases of assault or insult. Then we have policemen who use physical violence. Call upon them. They're to be had most anywhere. But I suspect that some of this attention that you get is in the nature of a compliment to this young woman. And I believe that her best protection is not the fists of this young man, but her own inner poise and self-containment. I'm sure that most men would not make an undue approach if the woman shows that she is not responsive to it, that she has poise and is indifferent to it. And I believe that out of this sharing together tonight, that this young man, this young woman can come to a new understanding. Their affection seems to be genuine and real, and I'm sure that they will be able to resolve this problem.
Well, the board's unanimous opinion here is that this young woman is not properly oriented, that she's not living in the Middle Ages or the Old South, and that she's placing a greater emphasis than necessary on this anxiety of hers, and the responsibility she places on the young man is unjust.
The Court of Human Relations will resume with the next case in a moment.
Anna M. Cross, Commissioner of Correction of the City of New York. Dr. Lloyd E. Foster is a clergyman who believes that if religion is to be effective and useful, it must spring out of the conflicts and the needs of human beings and attempt to bring some answer to those needs. The Honorable Frederick R. Couder, Jr. is one of the country's great trial lawyers and was a distinguished representative from New York for so long a time in the halls of the Congress of the United States. Now here is an issue, number 2341, which I think has the power to touch the thoughtful mind. Here is the complainant.
Mr. Alexander, I always thought that when a girl was in trouble and dire need, she could turn to her family for help. Since my mother is the only one living, my father has been dead for 3 years, I naturally turned to her. I am 23 years old, and I'm in serious trouble. And I feel exasperating when I turned to my mother for help. All she would give me was indifference, abuse, and calling me names.
Now, we understand that you were married. How old were you when you married?
I was 18 when I was married. The first year, I had a baby. Soon after the baby was born, my husband started to drink, go out nights, and stay out and lose his job. Shortly after that, I had another baby, and he got worse, so I had to go back to work. I felt that if I had to support my 2 children, my husband and myself, I would go out on my own.
Is that what you had to do, to support your husband as well as the 2 children?
That's right. He'd lose his job, and I'd have to go back to work and support him, too.
And he spent most of his time drinking and not coming home nights.
That's right.
And so you left him. Well, now, what's happened since?
Since then, I have boarded the children out in a private home. I find it impossible to work and take care of them, too.
Well, yeah, I think you're talking a little too rapidly for the board to follow you. You say that you boarded your children
In a private home.
And you found it difficult, of course, to work and take care of 2 children, and that's why you did that.
That's right.
Now, you had evenings to yourself, didn't you?
Yes, I met this young man, and I started to go out with him evenings every night after work.
You were very lonely?
Very lonely and very depressed.
Now, was it your intention to marry this young man?
Yes, at the time it was my intention, but I had no grounds for divorce, no money, and I wasn't free.
And now, what situation do you find yourself in?
I find myself up against a stone wall with no one to turn to.
Well, just so the board will understand this, do we realize that as a result of your relationship with this young man, you find yourself in serious trouble?
Yes, I do. I find myself in a predicament where I'm having a child by this man, and I can't tell my husband about it because if I do, he will try and take my children away from me just for spite.
And we understand, of course, that you've been separated from your husband for some time.
Yes, I have, for almost a year.
Now, because you couldn't find a friend in this man, and your husband certainly isn't a friend, what did you decide to do?
I tried to turn to my mother for friendship and advice, but she refused to give me any kind of advice at all. She showed me indifference. She told me I was to blame for everything, that it was all my fault to begin with.
And so now you would like to have this settled as to just what the responsibility of a mother is.
How far she should go.
Well, Mother, suppose we hear about your point of view.
Mr. Alexander, I told my daughter that as far as I'm concerned, I will have nothing to do with it.
Why?
She got herself into this, and she will just have to get out of it the best way she knows how.
Well, now, would you tell this board just what your conception of a mother is?
Well, I don't believe in these sentimental mothers where the child goes out and does what she wants to and come running to me for help.
Do you feel that that's not the kind of mother that you admire, the mother that's overindulgent?
No, I don't. I feel that they should get out of their own responsibilities.
What kind of a bringing up would you say you gave this girl?
I gave my daughter what I hoped was a good bringing up.
And what happened?
She got married against my wishes, and it didn't turn out. And
following the marriage, she separated from her husband?
Yes, she separated from her husband and got herself involved.
Well, what about your own life? Do you feel that you have plenty to do in your own life?
I have many responsibilities. I have my own life to take care of, and I just can't see doing anything for her.
Well, what position do you find yourself? We address the complainant daughter in at this time.
I feel myself trapped. With no
You
one
feel
to...
yourself what?
Trapped. I feel myself trapped.
Why?
But I have no one to turn to. I thought I had a friend in my husband, but I realized he was not only a friend, he was irresponsible. He wasn't a husband or a father.
Do you feel that your husband would be spiteful enough if he found out about this situation?
Yes, I
to
believe
do
he
something
would.
about taking the children away?
Yes, he's always threatened me if I ever did anything wrong. They take my children away from me.
And what about this man that's responsible?
I've talked to him, but he says he can't do anything and he refuses to marry me.
So that your last resort was your mother?
That's right. I thought the one person in the world would be my mother, that I can turn to her for understanding and friendship. I don't understand it.
Well, if she were hungry, I might consider.
You mean you'd consider feeding her if she was hungry?
Feeding her if she was hungry, yes. But
Well, why won't you consider feeding her spiritually or helping her any other way? Is she hungry any other way?
well, I feel that she.
Do you feel that she violated any code that you like to observe?
Yes, she didn't use decency and self-respect toward me, so she should just try to get out of it the best way she knows how.
Well, don't you feel that you have any special obligation as a mother to help your daughter who's in very serious trouble?
No, I am not one of these holy mothers. Any female can have a child.
Did you support your daughter?
Yes, I did until she was 17 years old, and she just has to get out of this the best way she knows how.
You mean you supported her till she was of age, say
Yeah.
18?
Well, until she went to work herself at 18.
And then married, and then she's on her own.
Yes.
You have no further responsibility.
No, that's the way I feel.
Well, suppose your daughter were arrested for stealing, let's say, and she was in prison.
No.
Wouldn't you want to help her?
No, I will not. Would not, because I feel that she is responsible. She knows right from wrong, and that she should get out of it.
Have to pay the price for what she does.
Yes, have to pay the price for what she does.
Now, you realize that we have a board here made up of 3 significant people who are earnest and sincere, and I'm going to ask you, before I turn this matter over to them, do you realize what you've said, and do you repeat that you feel no obligation
That's
as a
right.
mother to help this daughter who states that she is in serious trouble along the lines that has been described
That's
here?
right, Mr. Alexander.
Judge Cross?
Well, I'm really confounded, Mr. Alexander. If this was the attitude of most mothers, the world would be a very sorry place. It seems to me the mother in this case has just shed all her responsibilities. She says she has no use for mothers because there's nothing to having a child. I'll go along with her that there's no reason to give any woman that just has a child any special crown of glory, but there isn't any relationship that has deeper significance than that of mother and child.
Well, I think,
And it's
Judge
then-
Cross, that what this woman has tried to state is that this is merely the result of a physical act. And
Yes, that's just it, and that is why I say it's under such circumstances that the mother should come forward and see what can she do for this girl in these sorry straits. Then there are the 2 children that are grandchildren and another in being. If there's anyone that has a responsibility here, and I'm not diminishing or for one moment taking away from the responsibility that rests upon the young mother and the mother-to-be, but the grandmother not to recognize that there is a maternal responsibility, although she is 23 years old. You don't shake it off that way.
That I cannot help her. That's
well, when you say you cannot help her, we can understand that perhaps financially you're not in a position to, but from what we understand from your daughter, you've called her names, is that right?
That's right.
Been abusive, turned your back on her, told her that she was in effect indecent, and have stated right here that you want nothing to do with her.
That's right. Well, I believe this, that she is of age. She should have had more common sense than to get herself into this situation.
But she's there now,
Yes,
and
I
she
know.
needs help. Who could she turn to but to her mother?
Mr. Kudare?
Well, I can well understand that this mother wouldn't be too happy about the unfortunate situation her daughter is in, but I can't believe that she won't realize that she's the one person in the world to whom this daughter can come for sympathy and understanding and help. And I'm sure she'll recognize that. I can't conceive of anything else. and the rewards of the relationship would be enormous. Obviously, the unfortunate daughter has had bad luck. She's made mistakes, but there she is. And after all, you are the mother. And
Dr.
you're the
Foster?
one person in the world to whom a child has the right to turn with the expectation of a sympathetic reception and help to get her started again on the right road.
I feel very sorry for the daughter whose life is so tangled, the mistakes that she's made. But I'm greatly disturbed by the mother's attitude, because she has given physical existence to her daughter. She shares with her in a very intimate way. And I'm disturbed that she will not stand by her daughter. I believe that a parent, a father or mother, must and may stand by a son or daughter, no matter what the mistakes are, the failures. They must stand by them. There must be someone to whom this girl can turn. And if the mother persists in this attitude, which seems to me to be rather callous and rather harsh, she will alienate her daughter completely, and they will be separated emotionally when there should be a bond between them. The daughter needs someone to forgive her and to understand her and to help her work out her life. And if the mother refuses to do this, to whom may she turn? No one. She's isolated and alone. And I would plead, therefore, with the mother to reconsider this and to be forgiving and understanding. And there will be a great reward for her if she will do this.
And while we can expect some degree of cooperation from the mother, just so that there will be no misunderstanding, I think we should all understand that this will be referred to an accredited agency so that proper help may be given, which we know will be supported by the mother. Now, the stated position of the mother here is that the daughter is undeserving of her help. As far as she, the mother, is concerned, that the daughter's actions have tended to disqualify her from obtaining the mother's help. And cutting through all other considerations, and in summing up, it's the unanimous opinion of this board that where the issue involves a mother, if the only children, as Judge Cross said so eloquently, who received help were those who actually deserved it, the plight of this world would indeed be a sorry one. That without in any way condoning the actions of this daughter, and we can understand the mortification and deep disappointment of any mother when things don't go right with children, the position of the board is that the mother has a very real responsibility. And I think it should be made clear that parents, don't you, members of this board, can be imposed upon. Sometimes it would seem almost beyond human endurance. Aside from this case, we know how parents are imposed upon by children who take advantage. And there must be a limit as to how far offspring who are of age and who are entirely irresponsible can go in imposing on overindulgent parents. But in this case, the board is of the definite opinion that the mother is hardly justified in completely turning her back on this very troubled young woman.